Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming today. We're happy to see everyone here. And Nahama, do you have anything you want to start with or say before I?
Just saying hi to everyone. Thank you for joining us. This will be another Environment for Revit webinar, Ask the Expert. So I'm very excited about this one because the last two sessions were purely topographies, and this one is kind of more interesting. It's a lot of collaboration tools. So why don't you start with introducing our tools, introducing Environment for Revit? What is it all about? Who needs it and why?
Everybody needs it. So, guys, thanks for being here again. Environment for Revit is geared towards our landscape architects out there, surveyors. Anybody in sort of the landscape world can get in with these tools. They are also handy for people kind of outside. You may not be a landscape architect, but you can still benefit from these tools. So there's a huge range of topo editing tools of a variety of methods, planting, coordination and collaboration tools. So coordination with AutoCAD, external civil data, and Rhino assets. And sort of that's what we're here to talk about today specifically. And you can see this great toolbar that is expanding with every release coming forward. So it's a fantastic tool. It really changed the landscape, literally, for anybody using Revit and anybody in the landscape architecture world. It's really enabling to bring a whole new set of people into this collaborative BIM world. So that's been quite the journey over the last few years since we've discovered this wonderful software. Anything I'm leaving out?
No, that's pretty much the gist of it. We have around 70, I think, more tools by today that focus on different aspects of anything that has to do with sites, modeling, and documentation in Revit. And today we are going to focus on some of the, I don't know if I should call it collaboration or interoperability tools. And I think we can start with the most interesting one, the Rhino Assets tool, right?
Yeah, great. So we'll do a little demo and description of the Rhino Assets tool. We'll open the floor to questions. We'll see what we get in, what we can answer, and then after that, we'll head towards seeing what you can do with CAD, a CAD file, and we'll hopefully get to civil and some scanning point cloud data by the end. So that's our agenda for today. So
Yeah.
take it away.
So anything you want to ask us about these topics over here, go ahead and shoot your questions. All right, so I'm going to start with introducing the Rhino Assets tool. And I think, the first question that a lot of people are asking is, all right, but we have other tools that are meant for collaboration between Rhino and Revit. And I think that two things that are special with the Rhino Assets by Environment for Revit is, first of all, you do not need to have Rhino at all installed on your computer. You just need to have the Rhino file. And that's different from all the other solutions. But also, it's a little bit geared towards landscape and site works. So if your focus is topography, then this one would be extremely useful for you. And so let's open the Rhino Assets tool and see what it looks like. So when I open it, that's the window that I get. And here I can click on Add Rhino File and simply browse. Let's find my file over here. It should be a demo. Rhino assets, and I think this is the one. All right. So you see, I'm simply inserting a regular 3D file. I don't need to have a Rhino license or anything on my computer. So it's perfect when it comes to teams working together. There is one person doing the conceptual design on Rhino and another person doing, the detailed design on Revit, and they can collaborate and they don't have to have specialties in the same software, right? So I could just take this file and open it from Rhino. Of course, there's a lot of parameters over here as well. But there's one thing I want you to notice is that what we do is that we group all the objects prior to inserting them, and that just helps us with the location and reloading of the model. So let's click on OK. And the first thing that happens is that environment is bringing all these elements in as direct shapes. That's what they called in Revit. They do not have any category yet, but these are direct shapes. And what's nice is that, take a look, there are two things here and here, right? So I'm going to drop down all the components of the file, and essentially everything that you have here is the exact same structure of how it is built within Rhino. So we have layers and we have objects. And for example, let's take a look at this topography, right? Or let's take a look at the paving, right? And you can see all the different elements. And what we can do is, for example, go to the topography and select it and go to these three dots and just start to map these elements according to the Revit categories. Now, currently, we are also able to map the categories. So you can see it's here, import to Revit as. But the nice thing is that we can also bring some of them or turn some of them into Revit native elements. And this is topographies, floors, and roofs. They're currently able to be native elements. So for example, let's go and turn this thing into a toposolid. And you can see I can apply system family. So now I can actually select a toposolid type. And let's click on OK. And let's just click on OK again, just to see what is going on in my model. And let's ungroup that for a second. So now I'm actually able to have a genuine native Revit toposolid. And what's nice about it is that I can actually now edit that. And when I'm editing the toposolid with environment topography tools, you can see in pink over here, let's do something like that. You can actually see the boundary, the true boundary that came from Rhino and the elevation points. And each of them is editable, both the boundary and the elevation points. So that's one aspect that is really nice. And really, there's a lot of aspects to this tool. Of course, over here, you can reload from. An environment will remember the location. It will remember your mapping of the different categories. So each element, which category you wanted it to be. And let's take a look at another few nice features. So of course, other elements that cannot come as native elements could just be defined over here. So stairs could be mapped as stairs. I can do it a little bit more quickly. All right, so walls can be mapped as walls. You can change the material, the appearance of them. So there's really a lot that you could do with it. And let's take a look at two nice features. So the first one is, how do I turn this Rhino element into a native Revit family? So a Revit loadable family. So let's say I created this bench design in Rhino. I'm going to go over here to the three dots. And instead of importing as category, let's replace it with family and actually create a new Revit family from this Rhino geometry directly. So let's call it, Rhino bench. Let's give it a category. So it's going to be furniture, right? And I can even take the material from Rhino. So let's get the Rhino display color. Not material, the display color is a little bit different. And as I click on OK, you can already see it as a loadable family in my file. And you can see I click on it, it's a loadable family. I can even go to edit family. So here it is, the same geometry from Rhino. And everything I can do with a Rhino family, I can do, with this element over here. Yeah.
Well, so you mentioned materials there. We've got a question. It says, how do you recommend handling material adjustments when importing Rhino models, particularly if the textures are detailed or unique?
So if you have a unique material in Rhino, that's still something that we haven't figured out. So I think the best thing would be to actually duplicate it and take like the texture and create a similar material in Revit and then assign it. Yep. So let's go back to the Rhino assets and just, for example, take these walls over here, go to the 3 dots, and let's say we're gonna go walls. So then as select, so you can do select manually. So as long as you have this unique material in your material library in Revit, you are able to go over here and it will open the regular, Revit. Let's look for stone. So it will open the regular Revit material library, right? And so you're able to say, all right, all these elements can take this material. So in Rhino, there is kind of a difference between material and color. So we can import color. We cannot yet import material. However, we're always open to requests. So let's click on OK. And let's see the walls. You can see that the material is changed. However, oh, there. Now you can see it in the texture, right? So I am able to influence the material through the Rhino assets and to map the material, but I'm not able to kind of inherit that. So that's a great question.
We've got a couple others. So that was materials. Best practices for layer management in Rhino to make importing and organizing assets in Revit smoother.
Yeah, that's a very important question, and especially when you collaborate between teams. If you create a total mess in your Rhino layers, it will be a little bit more difficult to work with that in Revit later, because Revit works according to categories rather than layers. Layers is more of a free form when you can take every object and put it in every layer, but categories are more strict. So my suggestion is to think about your layers as categories, right? And it can be subcategories. So for example, I can say wall is a category. Now I can have 2 layers for walls, right? Seating walls, retaining walls, whatever. But as long as the walls are in one layer, it'll be much easier for me to go and, shift select all these walls and work on them together, rather if every wall would be in a different layer. So I think that's the one thing that I would recommend. Keep it very, very organized.
So within a wall layer that turns into a wall category, I can still map my retaining wall to my Revit retaining wall type, is what I'm seeing.
Soon. I mean, soon we will also have, system families in walls as well. But
Terrific.
Theoretically, yes, definitely. So you can select every instance separately. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, it looks very exciting. All right, and one last one for now. Keep them coming, guys. And this is a good one. So how do you sync Rhino models into Revit during an active design process, especially for projects with rapid iterations? So what happens if, I think this is where this person is going, what happens when the Rhino model changes? How do I get it back with those new updates into Revit?
Yeah, so what we tried to create here is kind of a hybrid creature between a link, let's say, and live elements in your model, which means that although it's live and you can edit that in Revit, you are always able to reload and reload from. So if you have changes to your file, what I would recommend is first group it, because then it would be easier to environment to gather all the objects together and remember your mapping, remember your preferences, and then you can reload it or reload from if you have changes. However, I do think that in the stage that you're moving from Rhino to Revit, at least when it comes to topographies, because again, that's my strong suit. So I think when it comes to topographies, continue to edit within Revit. So try to have as little of this jumping back and forth, unless it's really, necessary for the project process. So you should, as always, the option is there, but you should be mindful of your workflow and where your project is, in the project stages.
Excellent, excellent. So it's nice. That's really nice that you can reload from. I like this. Very, very excellent. Okay, got another one. Issues with scale and alignment when bringing Rhino assets into Revit. Any tips to ensure accuracy? Well, I guess to the asker, my first question is, are you using environment? Are you having those issues with environment?
Yeah.
You may not be able to answer that yes or no, but...
Yeah, so you're correct, Emily. So if you're having these issues with environment, that's our thing to handle. And then please reach out to us at contacts@arcintelligence.com, and then we can see the specific issue and see whether it's a bug, whether it's something that we should improve in the future. Other than that, you are able to define the units prior to the import over here, and you are able to work within shared coordinates. So both the location and the scale should be mapped out at the beginning, and then it should be accurate. But again, if you do that, if you do give it a go and something is funky and doesn't go right, then reach out to us, and then we have to figure out what exactly is going wrong.
Mm-hmm. All right. So far, more questions. Oh, Misty.
No. All right. So if there's no more questions, I just want to see really last feature for the Rhino assets, and that's the ability to read Rhino blocks. So these trees over here are blocks in Rhino, and you can see that environment can recognize them as like a block and the amount of blocks and the name of the block. And what's nice is that I can swap them with a Revit family that I already have in my model. So let's say these trees. I can create a duplicate type of the family, so I'll know that this came from Rhino, and I can even take some of the parameters from Rhino and swap them into instance parameters in Revit. So I'm just going to click on OK now, and you'll see that my trees are going to be, first of all, very small because I didn't give them an elevation, but also they'll have the elevation that is defined to them in Rhino. So a lot of times I would have to take them to 0 and rehost them on my topography. Then just to make it a little bit nice, let's give them a normal size, right? So there you can see how I can swap these families, these blocks, with Revit families. So that's another option that exists. All right. Other questions about the Rhino assets?
Yeah, one last one so far. Are there any specific guidelines for organizing or naming Rhino blocks to avoid confusion when working with Revit?
Well, nothing that comes to mind. Again, just keeping the layers. So if you want better control, but the environment can read all blocks of the same type. So for example, if I would have, maybe I should have an example with a few different types of blocks, because it will only unite them if they're the same block. So as long as it's a different block in Rhino, then you'll see them as different elements in Revit. So nothing really comes to mind about that.
And so I'll just maybe ask a follow-up to the submitter for you to think about. Are you worried about your Rhino blocks now being a family in Revit that you're afraid somebody is going to use unintentionally? So I'm not sure if that's possible, right? Like if we're swapping out a Rhino block for a Revit family, and you'd rather use a native Revit family instead of a converted Rhino block. There could be some naming schemes that you would put in place on the Rhino side. Whatever you name that block, put an R in front of it, and then, I guess R for Rhino, R for Revit. Anyways, you can pick an initial on both sides or either side that would differentiate, something as an imported block versus something that's native in Revit. So that's maybe an option there.
All right.
All right. Well then, I think those are great questions. And so now we will switch gears and I will share my screen and we can take a look at AutoCAD. So that was a great outro because we're going to talk a little bit about taking a Revit block and converting it, an AutoCAD block and converting it to a Revit family. I am sharing my screen, Misty. Do I have to do it? There we go. She's on it. Look at that. All right.
The one thing is, Emily, I have to say that I myself don't see the questions for some reason.
Yeah, I don't see the questions in the Q&A either, but Misty is posting them in our live chat, thankfully.
Yeah, so they are coming through an inbox, which is actually a new feature here that I haven't seen. I'm trying to translate them back over there, but you guys attending, let me know if you're able to type in the live chat or if somehow it's disabled, but I would love for you guys to throw them in there. Either way, we appreciate these questions and love your engagement, so thank you.
Yep, that's what we're here for. We really want to see what you guys are looking for and wanting to learn about this software, because really the more you know about it, the more likely you are to be able to use it and convince anybody else in your office that it's a good thing. It's going to save you time and effort and get you a better product in the end. And really that's all we're after, is a better product, better coordination between teams and firms and just for that final outcome. So there's my little spiel. Okay, so back on the CAD side, I had to jump into CAD to kind of tweak this file last night, and boy, that AutoCAD hat was a bit dusty, but I figured it out. And then I went back into Revit and started typing enter after all of my commands, and that was a whole something else. So here we are. I've imported, I have linked a CAD file. I jumped in there already just to have it up and running. And so this is a regular old CAD file that I've linked in, and I'm going to go to the environment tab, and we're going to tackle the get blocks on our environment tab. So what this is going to help us with, it's really super actually, unless it's, there it is, okay, is first things first, select the CAD file that you want. And I think I already had it selected, so we're good to go. And now I want to, you can see I've got some trees, deciduous and coniferous. I've got some bench pads here as well. So I'd like to convert all of those into a Revit element. So if you only have one block, you can basically just substitute one for one. But since I've got three, and there's a lot of each, we have this advanced replacement tools, which popped up on my other screen, and it gives you a list of all of the blocks. So this is terrific. So what you can do is I can see that this is my deciduous tree. So let's go grab my oval. I've got a coniferous. Let's go get my pyramidal shaped tree. And I also have a bench pad. So let's see if I have any benches. Okay. Now the template that I'm using, in case you're wondering where I'm getting all these fun trees and benches, this is actually an environment for Revit template. You can get it, check out the website, and it is available for everybody. So I'm going to apply this list, and it brings, you can see it's highlighted all of those blocks on my screen, And the next thing I'm going to take a look at is block attributes. So inside of all of my plant, and I didn't have any attributes in the bench, blocks, I have attributes that I would like to bring into Revit. So we have block name. You can map that block name into a Revit property if you would like. I'm going to ignore it for now, just for a bit of a demo of everything. So block name, I'm going to let that one go. Plant ID, right? What number of plant is this, and so on. So my first option, if I don't have anywhere to map it into in Revit, is as in attribute, and it will create a Revit attribute called plant ID. And what we often use in Revit to ID windows and doors and plants as with a unique identifier, not something that would be the same for all, is mark. Okay, so this is going to be a different number for everything. And then I've got some other classic landscape items, DBH. So do I have something that pre-exists in Revit? I don't right now, but you could. And so I'm going to map most of these to as in attribute. So I thought I had one in here that was built as something else, but I might not have saved that when I was editing this last night. So I'm going to put them all into as in attribute. But let's say I had something pre-built in here. You're just going to pick it from this list, and we'll watch if any values from conifer height they will be mapped over to comments. All right. So there are some. Let's see. Nope. Forgot something I was going to say, but then we're just going to move on. Placement settings. As Revit is going to place these blocks, we have the option to rotate the instance according to the block value. So I may have a dozen benches in here, but they're following the nuances of my pathway. So I can't just drop a block in like I could a tree, which doesn't really have a direction. So I can check this box, and of course this is going to apply to my trees as well, but really there's not too much to worry about there, but I definitely want it to apply to my benches. And if you had two separate things, I mean, you could always do this a couple of times to exclude different families if you wanted to run it with different settings. Use the block Z value. So if your CAD file is geolocated, it's got a Z value for everything, you can match that block Z value. I am at 0 here, so whether I checked this or not would not make a difference. And then locate by block center. So the insertion point of your block may not be identical to or may not be in the center, whereas in Revit, a lot of our insertion points are right in the center of a block. And so I'm going to use this one to make sure my benches get as close as they can to the center of where I need them to be. Now, my bench is not in the center of my bench pad, which is the total block, but I'm not including, my bench doesn't have a bench pad, and so on, and a little accessible curb. So we'll see what this turns out. And placement level, I am at sea level. This will be sufficient for me. But if you had other levels in your project, they will be available here. Am I leaving anything out that's important?
No, you have the elevation one, which you did, mention, but it's only when the AutoCAD elevations are correct, which is very rarely.
Rarely. Yes. Z values are not very popular in AutoCAD, but some people do use them. So when I hit OK at this point, we are going to see a whole bunch of really tiny trees because I mapped them to a tree, and that tree in its base format just doesn't have height and diameter settings yet, but we can adjust that. So don't worry about that, because if you had a tree that already had those values, it would have those values. But there we go. If I look in the properties, the type properties of my tree, my common name is here, my DBH, my function, mark, it's still here, but we mapped it to mark. So there's some little kinks that we have to work out. We're still developing this one. And so Nahama did warn me on this one beforehand that we might end up with a duplicate for this. And so we're working on that one. and then otherwise everything is coming across, and now I can type whatever I need in here.
Yeah, and
So
I think it's really nice to see also the the rotation of the bench,
yeah,
which is as it was in AutoCAD, which is a lot of it's very, very important. And the other thing is, sometimes there are firms that already have a lot of, for example, planting information in AutoCAD. So that would be a really, really easy way to just transfer all the planting information from CAD into Revit very quickly. You can duplicate the types, you can transfer type parameter. So that's a really good solution also to model things from AutoCAD to Revit, but also if you need to transfer information that you collected for a while in AutoCAD and you want to move it into Revit.
excellent. So all of these super tips, and now I'm just taking my Revit block and giving it an appropriate size, and they're all tied together. If I need obviously different sizes for different blocks, that's on the Revit side of things now. So you're going in, you're duplicating or swapping it out for other trees that you may have already made. I only have one oval shaped tree, so I can duplicate this for the various sizes that I need. In this case, my height and my size is a type parameter. So that's why they're all moving as one. So for anybody who's not yet in Revit and is looking at this from that point of view, we manage them. We don't just scale our blocks, whereas all of these are the exact same block in AutoCAD, and they're just scaled to be different sizes. So in Revit, we need to duplicate some items there. So yeah, once they're all in Revit, now they're Revit objects. We can move, we can adjust, we can change, and we can move forwards with our Revit.
And again, you have this behavior of mapping. So you have a list of CAD objects and then a list of Revit objects. There are a couple of questions, actually a little bit unrelated. There's one, John asked, I am a newbie at Rhino. What's the best learning resource to use as an experienced Revit BIM manager? So I don't know if you're looking to learn Rhino, then McNeil has a really good YouTube channel. And that would be a good resource. However, if you're looking to learn about the Rhino assets in Revit and like how to transition Rhino to Revit, then using the environment tool, there's really not a lot to learn other than things I showed today. And there's the Arc Intelligence YouTube channel where we show these things. You also have Arc Intelligence website with the user guide. So it really depends what you want to learn. And then, of course, there are other tools to collaborate Rhino and Revit, and then you have to learn each tool specifically. If you do work with Rhino inside, that you need both Rhino and Grasshopper knowledge, and that's the McNeil YouTube. McNeil are just really good at that, so you have a lot of resources up there. There's another question about the template file that you mentioned. So I actually posted a link. It's not just on our website. You do have to go in through the link, and I'm posting it again. And then I got a question. Does the template provide pre-configured settings for common landscape features, such as planting schedule, irrigation system, or topographical elements? So the purpose of this template is to really be a basic starting point for landscape architects. It's not here to replace the office template, which is something that is really important for you to develop. But it's just here to be a landscape-oriented starting point where you do have planting schedule and everything. You do not have irrigation system in the template currently because that's still not an environment feature. However, we are these days actually working on irrigation features for Environment for Revit. So expect it within 2025. Forgive me all the programmers that I'm giving these promises for you, but that's the expectation. So it should be out this year, and it's really, really exciting. So Emily is kind of browsing our template and how it has all the tags and how it actually refers to everything that landscape project should have. There's one last thing that I want to show actually regarding AutoCAD, and that's not exactly with the get blocks, but if I can show my screen for a second, I actually also wanted to show that within environment topography tools, let's just delete this one for a second, and you can see these are blocks that I swapped, right? So within environment topography tools, we did lately add a new feature within the add line option, so you can build a topography from lines. And we lately added the option to use CAD contour lines. I think these are these ones. Yeah, maybe I'm missing. So we did have the option to add CAD contour lines in here. No, let me just cancel. And it works very similar to the one that is native to Revit, all right? So you can see that over here, I was supposed to select the AutoCAD file, and then I was able to select the specific layers where I have the lines in, and now I could just, select all the lines. So now you'll probably ask the question, all right, if Revit already has this feature, why did environment team waste their time on adding this feature into their topography toolset? Well, the answer is, first of all, everything that is in the topography toolset is more flexible and it's more, it's easy to use. So once I add these points, I can actually move them and adjust them, and it's very, very flexible. But the other advantage of using the add lines to model topographies from AutoCAD is because you have the indication over here of how many points you're going to have. And then you can actually control that with the custom settings option. And for example, now I have like 1,500 points. Then I can say, all right, I want to have a point every 5 meters, and then I'll get less points, all right? Or then I can divide every line into 5 points only. Hopefully my computer would not stuck now because there's really, yeah. So there's a lot of options on how to control the amount of points that I get, the amount of accuracy. I can increase it or decrease it the way I want to. And of course, I can also control the type of toposolid that I'm entering here, change the sketch, so the boundary of the toposolid. So really, there's a lot of things that I can do if I'm working through the topography tool set, which is a lot more flexible. If you didn't yet get to try the topography tool set, the 2 last webinars, I think we have a recording of them. So that's a pretty good overview of them.
Yep. Excellent. And we have, well, I think you can see the questions now in the live chat, I think. But we have one from Vic about setting up the AutoCAD file when exporting them out of Vectorworks. So I don't know how much you know about Vectorworks, but I don't know much.
Very basic knowledge of Vectorworks, so I apologize. But what he says is the online thickness, overlapping lines, etc. Also, many times tab used to pick up continuous lines just doesn't work. Any tips here? Wow. When it's exported from Vectorworks, that would be a question to them, I think. So something with their export definition of the lines, I share your frustration. When the tab thing doesn't work on lines, that's a real mess.
Yes. So sorry, Vic, we may not have that one because Vectorworks is not in our wheelhouse.
Yeah.
So see if you can connect with your Vectorworks support on that one. And you have another one, a small tutorial set up an AutoCAD file at site level with sea level as bad line level. So I'm not sure if I'm just missing something there, but I think what you're looking for is an AutoCAD file at site level with sea level. I want to say there might be something on YouTube. I'm not sure. Because we're on the Revit side of things, we are not necessarily setting out AutoCAD tutorials for that sort of setup. So you might need to look into, I don't know how many of you have any resources for AutoCAD site information, but there may be something on the civil YouTube channel somewhere.
I think specifically in AutoCAD, if you don't do anything, then everything is in sea level. So if your Revit file has a level that's defined as sea level and it's down in the survey point, and then you import this AutoCAD file and you don't have elevation in AutoCAD, it will fall at sea level. And then if you give them elevation in AutoCAD, then it will be an absolute elevation relative to the sea level. That's how I understand AutoCAD work. But again, I'm not the authority for AutoCAD. Gladly.
Yep.
Yeah. Any other question?
Well, Francis has asked, can we do cut fill? And yes, we can. There is a native AutoCAD, Autodesk. Oh, now I'm in AutoCAD mode. There is a native Revit cut fill, but there is an enhanced environment cut fill. I don't want to call it a tool because it's already it's just a native property now of all top solid.
There's a lot of hidden environment gems that you wouldn't know that they're here because you have an environment license. But essentially the way Revit work is we have phases, right? Phases are phases of time, right? It's the timeline of the project. So as long as I took this topography and I marked it as an existing topography, and then right above it, I have other topographies. Now, this file was kind of updated from 2023, so I had to kind of create a topo-solid for that to work. But as long as I have a topography that is above this existing topography, I can get the cut and fill of that. And that's native Revit. Now, it's a little bit problematic with the 2024 version. This is why Environment created its own feature for calculating earthworks. And then I only have to activate. I'm sorry, my cat is jumping on my table as we speak. So let me just kick him out. So I removed the cat from here. And as you can see, I just had to activate this hidden environment feature, and I got the accurate cut and fill calculation. We also made internal experiments with it, and we saw that the accuracy level is even higher than Civil 3D, which was surprising to us, but we were very happy to find out. So this means that working in Revit, you're able to get very accurate cut and fill quantities at every stage of the project. Yeah.
All right. And Vic has corrected. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Vic has corrected himself. He was looking for a Revit file with an imported AutoCAD as a link. So I believe there's some
a Revit file with an imported AutoCAD file brought in as a link. So as I said before, what we are looking for is, all right, so I think we have, sorry, I'm trying to do things and think as I go. I think we have a video that shows this a little bit. Let me search for it in a second and post it over here about the shared coordinates and the overall setup of a Revit file. So first of all, if you use our template, then you'll see that you have a dedicated level that is sea level, and that the survey point and internal origin are located at this sea level. And then when you insert an AutoCAD file and link a file into Revit, it asks you to associate it with a specific Revit level. So if you have the C level and it's in a correct elevation and you associate the CAD link with it, then you can be sure that the elevations that you defined in AutoCAD will translate accurately into Revit. So that's, I hope I answered the question correctly.
This is, I'd say it's a huge topic. It's a huge question, really, to answer in this amount of time, but it can be tricky. So there are resources out there. Vic, there's some YouTube tutorials from Environment, and if you have more in-depth questions, maybe we just need
oh yeah, here that one. That's the one I wanted to show actually.
Yeah, this
so
is a good one.
Lately, yeah, it's not really lately, but we published this very long article that essentially explains in general how Revit works when it comes to coordinates, and I connect coordinates and levels together because in landscape that's very important. And then it shows all kinds of methods and how to make it work. And again, our template is working according to this one. So you can go to Arc Intelligence news section and you can find it, or I can put the link in the chat right now. So there it is. Right. So now I think we can move to the next topic, which is Civil 3D.
Very exciting.
A very hot topic for site engineers, landscape architects, and even architects, that are that has to work with civil 3D people. So yeah, this feature is pretty early on. There's a lot of companies that have, Civil 3D and Revit at the same office within the same team, or just, teams that are working together. And essentially, there is a built-in way in Revit to import Civil 3D topographies into Revit, but it's very limited, and it wasn't flexible enough. And also, you had to have your project in the cloud, so it wasn't. You're not able to import civil topographies if your project is not in the cloud.
Yeah.
So what you have to do prior to inserting any Civil 3D element into Revit is to just export it into land.xml. So you can see in Civil 3D you have this output tab, and then you have export to land.xml. And then what you can see over here is what Civil 3D looks like. So it has these components that are called corridors, thin surfaces, etc. And these exactly, just like in the Rhino assets tool, where we broke it down within Revit to the same elements that are there in Rhino, it's going to be the same over here in Civil 3D. And let's go to our Revit model. And what I want you to see over here is that these sidewalks and this topography all came from Civil 3D. And they are now live elements within my Revit model. So I did that with my external civil data feature. And I'm just going to go in it and show you how my civil elements, you see my civil files are here. And for the sake of the example, I'm just going to remove that from my file, right? And I'm going to bring it back in so you can see how I do that. So let's go to add more civil data. And just like with the Rhino assets tool, I can go to browse and just find oh my God, I was able to find it. I'm just going to find my civil file, and you can see that this is an XML file format that was exported from Civil 3D. And I'm going to click on open. And before I'm going to click on OK, again, pay attention, you have shared coordinates or project internal. But take a look at this part. We have the visible elements option. So as you saw before, this civil file contains a lot of elements. And over here, you can see the 3 elements that we currently allow to bring from Civil 3D into Revit. These are thin surfaces. They are turning into topographies. Corridors, which are turning into solid elements under the roadway category. And essentially, you cannot do anything with them other than adding rebar. So if you're a structural engineer, or if you just want to see the 3D aspect of it, it's 2 different purposes. Then you can bring these roadways. And you can also bring alignments. So here's a little secret. If you're Revit savvy, here's something you didn't know about Revit. Revit has an alignment category built into it, but you cannot do anything with it unless you have environment for Revit. So if you have environment for Revit, you're able to either bring alignments from Civil 3D, but also edit them with the alignment tools that we have over here, or even just create them in Revit. But for this example, I would actually only bring the topographies right now. You can see that you can control the material. It's really, there's a lot of things and a lot of flexibility. You can control which parts of the road you bring. There's a lot of flexibility over here and a lot of things that you can do. But for this one, I'm just going to bring in the topographies, right? And you can see that even just bringing in the topographies, I have a lot of mess over here, right? So I can collapse this part and then actually take a look at each element separately and then just delete the ones that I don't need, right? So I deleted one of them. I'm going to delete the other one because it's very common to have this kind of mess coming from your Civil 3D engineers. Now, let's say that during my project, something has changed. So they changed the street or something. I can just go back to the external civil data. And again, very similarly to how we used it in the Rhino assets, it's kind of a hybrid between a live element and something that you can, a link. So I can go reload from and then take the other type of street. And then environment will also remember all my definitions from before. I can click on OK and I have the updated element. So what's nice about it is that because it's a live element in my model, I'm actually able to, for example, relate to it in my design. And here's an example of, designing a pathway that goes from one street to another, right? Or another example is, let's take some sort of a tree, right? And I'm able to host elements on top of it. So that's a seamless collaboration, the way I see it. I see that our time is a little bit short, so I just want to give one last example of how this seamless collaboration can happen, with environment tools. And that's over here. This is a finished grade that I got from the civil engineer. So a lot of landscape architects don't do the grading on their own in a lot of projects. And they actually just get something like that from the civil engineer, which if you ask me as a landscape architect, I would do it better. No harm to anyone, right? But that's how it is, right? And then you have to take your layout. So let's say that this is my landscape architecture layout, and I have to take my layout and to grade it according to the Civil 3D topography. So I can do it with environment for Revit. I could just select all of these elements and then go to match reference surface. Or if you're in other versions of Revit, there's some other tools that you can use. But essentially, I can select this topography that came from Civil 3D and click on apply and then adjust all my topographies or all my layouts into it. And don't worry if environment shows you a few warnings. It just means that some information is missing and environment is going to complete it on their own. Let's hide this one and see the the finished result. So that's the finished results, and it's according to the civil engineer file. Now I know there's this glitch over here, right? And that's something that is very, very common with Revit and Civil 3D collaboration, because in Civil 3D they don't have walls, so they build the surface like that to suggest that there's a wall over here. But then sometimes if I open this one with environment topography tools, you can see that sometimes these points over here at the bottom of the wall are kind of confusing to them. So, and again, that's the amazing flexibility, is that you can actually take the points that came from Civil 3D and just adjust them to what you want them to be, right? So I don't need all these points over here. I can just delete them and only leave these points at the top, right? So that's what I want to have, and not at the bottom of the wall. So I can click now on finish. And again, I'll have my boundary, but with the correct grading from the civil engineer. And of course, it goes both ways. So you also have export to LandXML. So it will export if you made any changes to these topographies. You can export them back to LandXML, and the civil engineer will get them within shared coordinates. I think we're very close to 1 hour, right?
We're right there. Excuse me, but I wanted to thank you, ladies. As always, these Ask the Experts and sessions are always so engaging, you guys. Thank you for attending and asking these wonderful questions. If you think of anything after the webinar, send them on in. I'll put my email in the chat. And what, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I forgot. There's one more feature I want to show.
Do it. We've
There's
got
always new stuff. It's so terrific.
to us.
I'll try to do it really quickly, but I think this is amazing for both landscape architects and surveyors. So I'll try to do it really, really quickly. But this is really short. There's not a lot to learn over here. Just point cloud to topography, right? Here's a point cloud. And what I want is to create an accurate topography that I'll be able to work with as a survey. So I'm just going to go click on my point cloud, and then I can either turn this entire thing into a topography, or in my case, I'm just going to specify a region. So let's say I want to see this part of the road, right? Apply region and create. So, and essentially what this thing is going to do, the environment algorithm is going to recognize which of the points in the point cloud are the ground and which are a wall, a lamppost, a tree, and separate them from the ground, to a topography. And then here we go. We have this small part that I just wanted to really quickly show you. And I want to show you a really cool thing over here. So let's create a section box. And I'm going to zoom in to where I have a sidewalk, just to give you an example of how accurate this could be. So take a look over here. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe I can change the scale a little bit to make it thinner. But you can really see how it reads the topography with the sidewalk and goes back over here. And then, of course, how it skips the walls and skip the trees. So that's, an amazing way for us to create an existing topography. Even, the surveyor could just give you, the point cloud, and then you can do something amazing with it. And I don't want to finish without showing you a really amazing example that one of our clients had in, I think in Norway. They had this super, super complex area that they had to model, right? And then it took them about, I think, 10 hours in Civil 3D and only 5 minutes with Environment for Revit, and they got an accuracy level that was, according to standards and to do everything. Now look at how many trees we have here, and still we were able to create this topography. So I just wanted to really quickly, I'm sorry, Misty, for stealing some time, but I really wanted to very quickly show this feature because it's like 1 minute to do, but it can save you so much time if you know that you have here that you have it. Karina says that this point cloud tool already saved me this year. Was really amazing and easy to use. Thank you, Karina. And yeah, I hope the rest of you found out something new and that you're going to use it. And yeah, that's it for today. I'm done stealing your time. I took extra 2 minutes.